If you don't know who Rusty Cooley is, you should know. Friends, Brian here for Yes You Can Play Guitar, and this is big today, guys. This is big, 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 big for me. You know, it amazes me. I've just been in this weird state the past couple of days about YouTube, and it's amazing how YouTube has given so much back to me. It's just been incredible. You know, 11,000 subscribers, a little over a year, all these wonderful friends around the world, a wonderful Patreon family who support my channel. It just amazes me. Do you want to know what I was doing a year ago for YouTube? I was out in a field playing guitar for cows. Well, Jesus, if my playing doesn't suck, that was not the reaction we were looking for. If in 1 year, people said you're going to have 11,000 subscribers, you're going to have an awesome Patreon family, and you'll be talking to Rusty Cooley in an interview, I would have laughed. I really would have. I would have thought that that was very funny. One of the top, probably cult favorite guitar players among guitar players, Rusty's technique makes us all, with good technique, feel very average. Guitar World, July 2008, ranked him 5th out of the top 50 fastest guitar players in the world. Of course, number 1 was a title won by, of course, very revered by Rusty and myself, the one and only Mr. Sean Lane. Rusty, to me, you guys know I'm a technique guy, okay? I've had periods in my guitar playing. I can remember a distinct period about 10 years ago where I really pushed myself. I was already an accomplished player, but I said, what can I do? What can I do if I really open things up and I really dedicate to my practice? Whose videos did I watch to really push me when I didn't want to practice? Rusty Cooley. So I pushed myself. And then I pushed myself. And then I pushed myself. And then I pushed myself even more. And we can't forget Rusty's famous episode of Bet You Can't Play This for Guitar World.
Bet you can't play this.
Oh, did I practice that lick and practice that lick. You know, when you meet someone that you really admire and really look up to, you always kind of wonder what it's going to be like, and you really hope you're not disappointed. You know, when I was in another industry for a few years, I looked up to someone, a number of people, but there's one person in particular who's very popular in that industry. I met him, and let's just say it was a big disappointment. With Rusty, I had a good feeling about Rusty. You know why? Many years ago, I got his Dean 7-string Xenoside guitar at the time. I did a review for it. I had a YouTube channel 10 years ago. You know, it wasn't like my YouTube channel now. It was more for my music school, to advertise my music school. I had a very busy music school at the time, but I didn't understand the bigger picture of YouTube. But I did a review of the guitar. I loved it so much. It's the Dean Xenoside 7-string. Rusty watched it. I think he commented on it, and he subscribed to my channel. And I thought, you know, this is a huge name in the guitar world. That's pretty cool of him. I knew with Rusty, he was going to be a good guy. If someone would say to me, just a week ago, and they'd say, what do you think of Rusty Cooley? One word: amazing, stunning, awe-inspiring. In my conversations with Rusty the past week, I've really come to learn that he's really just a really awesome guy. If someone asked me today, can you describe Rusty Cooley in one word? I would say, yes, kind. Rusty is a very kind guy. And I'm also part of Rusty's Patreon. So for all you hardcore guitar players out there, you want to check out Rusty's Patreon. We had a big conversation about it before the interview, and there's a lot of big things to come. If you ever want to be inspired and want to practice, I would check out his Patreon for sure. Guys, I want to thank you all again for the support. You know, this is a big moment for me. You know, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh my God, I'm talking to Rusty Cooley. I was trying not to fanboy out. But we had a great conversation. And again, here it is in full. All of you hardcore guitar fanatics, check it out. And remember, practice hard, but practice smart. And we'll see you soon. Friends, Brian here for Yes You Can Play Guitar, and I got to tell you something. This is a big thing for me. This is a big deal. A year ago, if my channel was new, if someone would have said you're going to have 11,000 subscribers and you're going to be interviewing this guy, I would have laughed. And then I would have laughed some more. I, as you guys know, musician for a long time, but I am a technique guy on the guitar. And you know, no matter how good you get, there's this one guy who always kept me in check. Okay? When you go on the playground, you think you're getting tough. There's always someone bigger. There's always someone stronger. You know, there's always someone stronger in the gym, no matter how strong you get. For me, this fellow really kept me in check, no matter how crazy my technique got. It's only my personal feeling, but I'm going to express it. I refer to this person as the scariest guitar player in the world. So if someone came from another planet and said, I'm going to demonstrate how to play guitar, it would be this guy. Friends, it's an absolute honor and joy for me to have here to talk today, the one and only Mr. Rusty Cooley. Rusty, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, dude, thank you. Just thank you for your kind words, man. Appreciate it. It's very cool, man. Thank you.
I'm honest. I think that's why people like me. Rusty, you know, let's just kind of get the usual stuff out of the way. What are your biggest influences? Who made you want to pick up the guitar?
Sure. Initially, I started playing guitar because me and some friends had been air guitaring with tennis rackets to some Ted Nugent records and some, things like that. And after a couple months of playing air guitar, I got a brilliant idea and said, "Hey guys, how about we get some real electric guitars?" And it kind of started there. So I wouldn't really say Ted Nugent was the reason I started playing guitar, but maybe it is. I don't know. I think my first real guitar hero, before I even realized there was such thing as guitar heroes, was Ace Frehley. I remember I started seeing him on TV when I was a kid, really young, way before I started playing guitar. But my initial first real guitar hero was Randy Rhoads. And when I started playing and discovered Randy's playing, it was Randy, your guy. I was always a big Eddie Van Halen fan too, but I was more of a Rhoads guy. I liked the classical and the heavier, darker kind of sound a lot. And then, from Rhoads, it was Malmsteen. When Yngwie came out, he was just, and this is what I don't think a lot of people understand today, the younger generation, is how much impact Yngwie had on the music scene.
Yeah.
There was nobody in rock and roll history that played guitar like that. Not even close. I mean, the closest would be maybe Cooley.
Yeah.
And I can definitely tell that Yngwie got a bit of his sound from there, for sure, whether he wants to admit it or not,
No, exactly.
But I had never heard scales used like that and arpeggios and the speed and whatnot. And I started listening to classical music because of Randy Rhoads. And then when Yngwie came out, I really dug deep into it and discovered Paganini and the whole classical thing. But, so Randy, Yngwie, and then I discovered Steve Vai. First, Guitar Player magazine years ago used to have this thing called a sound page. And Steve Vai used to be the transcriber for it. And they would feature a track off somebody's new album every month. And then Vai would tab it out. And the first song that they tabbed out was the Attitude song.
Okay.
From Flexible. And that's the first thing I heard by Vi. I pop on this little floppy record and you had to stick a nickel on it to hold it so it doesn't spin around and wrong and whatnot. And the Attitude song came on and it was instantly hooked. So Yngwie and Vi and Rhoads, and then the whole Shrapnel catalog for real. Jason Becker, Marty Friedman, Paul Gilbert. Paul Gilbert, Yngwie, and Jason Becker were my three biggest influences in my early years, aside from Rhodes. Um, and then later it became, Sean Lane. I was
Oh,
a huge Sean Lane fan.
yeah,
Holdsworth, obviously, Demiola.
yeah.
Has been into Struns and Farah, and just all over the board. I've always listened to everything. So I've always been very widely influenced, and I think that's an important thing for people to understand.
Yeah.
If you just listen to one thing, that's what you're going to end up sounding like. If you're a metal guitar player and you just listen to metal guitar players, well, guess what you're going to sound like.
Yeah.
It's the true innovators that go outside their style or their genre of music, whatever direction you choose to go. If you listen to a little bit of this, jazz, blues, funk, gospel, fusion, whatever, and you channel that all into what you do, then you have much more likelihood to produce something that's new and unique instead of just rehashing the same old thing.
So we're in the same age bracket, and
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a unique question. I don't think you've probably been asked this before, but
Okay.
all those instructional videos from the 80s. Okay,
Mhm.
I had one that my first guitar teacher. He was quite a good guitar. I tried to teach myself for years, and I sucked.
Yeah.
It just never. But he lent me a video one time.
Hmm.
Okay, and it was like a really pivotal moment for me. And I'm not going to mention it yet, but I want to ask if any of those instructional videos, if you ever got those moments where you're like, oh my god, like
Oh yeah,
what the
sure.
f? Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Trying to think if I was still in high school. Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Yeah. Intense Rock 1 by Paul Gilbert.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That video came out right when I needed it
Yeah.
because I had my playing was taken off and it was doing really good, and I needed that little extra thing to just push it over the edge, and that was it. I mean, I learned every lick off that video, inside and out, and then every video that followed.
Yeah.
Vinnie Moore's and I was into all of them. Gambale was a big influence on
Yeah.
me as a player, but not only as a player, but as his instructional stuff too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was thinking about this earlier. Um, the majority of my theory does not come from listening to rock and roll guitar players. I mean, I initially learned theory from Metal Method, Doug Marks, because that's where
Yeah. I remember Doug. Yeah.
I'm self-educated. I tried taking lessons, but they wanted to, both the teachers I had in the beginning, which lasted a total of about a month and a half, wanted me to learn how to Melbay Book 1, and I was 15, dude. It was
Oh
like not going
god.
to happen.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine had been carrying a Metal Method ad around in his wallet, and I said, dude, if you're not going to use that, let me have it. And I started ordering all the Metal Method stuff. So initially I learned my theory from Doug Marks as a Metal Method. But beyond that, all of my knowledge of theory didn't come from rock and metal guitar players. It was like Don Mock and Scott Henderson, Frank Gambale, Mike Stern, and all those guys.
Yeah.
Because they knew all the stuff. It's like I never really wanted to be a fusion guitar player, but I wanted to know what they did so I could take that information and apply it to what I do.
Yeah.
It makes it much more unique. So long answer, but yeah, Paul Gilbert in Sims Rock 1.
Mine, I'll tell you mine, and you might be able to relate to it. I know some other well-known international guitar players. Mine for me was Michelangelo Badio, the Starlix one.
Oh yeah, I had that too.
I remember watching that, and I'm just like, dude, what
Yeah,
is this? I was
yeah,
just mesmerized by his playing and everything he was doing. I know that kind of kicked up something in me, but
yeah,
that was that
sure.
video that I wore out.
Sure. I liked that one too, man. Mine was Intense Rock 1. I think I had already been through Intense Rock 1 when Badios came out.
Yeah.
It was much later. But yeah, that one's good. I don't know if you know any history about that video or not, but do you know what amp he was playing through on that video?
Uh, Michelangelo
Yeah.
it was Marshall, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was a little tiny practice amp. They got there and they couldn't set his rig up right or something like that. And he ended up doing that whole video on like a little Marshall,
I didn't know
something like
that.
110 or something like that.
Wow.
That's what
Yeah.
he's using in the entire video.
Wow. That's
Most
amazing.
guitar players would have crumbled.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No,
I gotta play
he's
through that. Are you kidding?
yeah. And then it showed him playing live, and he had this weird
Yeah.
robe on, and he was just
Yeah.
like going,
Yeah.
"What
Yeah,
the
that
hell is
white,
this?"
the white thing along with the tails and stuff. Yeah.
And you're just sitting there going, "What the?" I noticed something in the '80s though. I don't know if you did. Maybe I'm crazy. People have said that I am crazy, but people didn't mention about metronomes much in the '80s. You'd buy some of those videos, and they'd be like, "Okay, get it up to speed, and we'll see you next time." You're kind of like,
Yeah.
it was my first guitar instructor that said, "No, we're going to get you some technique, and this is how we're going to do it." But did you find that in the '80s a little bit too, or?
Well, here's my thing, man. Somebody told me I needed to get a metronome one time, and I was at a level in my playing when I was still pretty young, and I didn't know about note subdivision. So I played everything to the click and went, okay, got it, chunk.
Okay.
That was the last time I used a metronome.
Yeah.
Um, by the time I figured out there's note subdivisions and all that stuff, you could play two notes over one click or three notes, or
Yeah.
the whole thing. By then, I already had been using a method that Doug Marks had mentioned in his lessons, and I practiced everything for 5 minutes a piece using a timer,
Timer? Huh? Okay.
and that's still how I practice to this day. I always thought that a metronome was for things that were rhythmically challenging. I didn't know it was a speed development tool.
Okay.
I had no idea when I was that young. Like I said, by the time I figured it out, the other method was already working really good for me. And I tried using metronomes before. Obviously, if you're in the studio, you're playing to a click, or if you're playing with a drum machine, it's much more interesting than playing to a click.
Yeah.
But I tried using them, and I feel like I'm spending more time fidgeting around with the dial. Can we try to this tempo, and let me play to this tempo, and start, stop, start, stop. It's just like when you practice using the timer method, you're practicing each example 5 minutes uninterrupted, nonstop. And the objective is like this: if you sit down and you say, okay, I got my practice schedule out, and I'm going to practice 20 alternate picking licks. That's 5 minutes a piece. Okay, that's 5 minutes a piece, nonstop, back to back. Okay. Now the objective during each 5 minute interval is not to play as fast as you can for 5 minutes. It's to play 5 minutes nonstop.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's almost like being on a treadmill cycle, but you have to monitor it yourself. When you're on a treadmill cycle, it'll walk you through it. So it might go something like this: you start off walking, you go to fast walking, then you're jogging, then you're sprinting, then you're jogging, then you're fast walking, and it cycles you through it. And when you're doing it, when you're as a guitar player, when you're practicing with the timer, you have to kind of gauge it yourself. You know what I mean? So I'll start off slow and kind of make sure my right and left hand technique is form is correct, and I'll start to build up. But at some point during each 5 minute interval, I'm going to establish my fastest clean speed. And when I establish my fastest clean speed, I'm going to start to push it till it breaks up. Right? When it starts breaking up, then I reel it back into my fastest clean speed, and then I start pushing it again. So you're doing this at some point in this 5 minute interval. You're doing this pushing and pulling at what you're physically able to do. Okay. Now the objective with the timer is, and now let me be really clear on this because I've been misunderstood on this so many times. The objective is not to try to play as fast as you can for 5 minutes. That's never the objective. It's 5 minutes of nonstop repetition. You try to play as fast as you can for 5 minutes, and you're going to blow your arm out in less than a minute, probably. You know what I mean? Who knows?
Yeah.
I've never done that, so I don't know. Because that's never been the objective. It's the nonstop repetition. So now, if I'm practicing something and it's 16th notes or eighth notes or quarter notes or whatever, I don't need a metronome to know if I'm on time or not. You know what I mean? So I don't need it for that. I realize that when you're using a metronome for speed development, you're using it to make sure you're on the click and you're right on the money for timing purposes. But like in general, I know what a triplet sounds like, or 16th note triplet, or whatever. So for me, that's not a rhythmically challenging thing, which is what I always thought metronomes were for. Like if you're going to attempt to play some Frank Zappa or some crazy rhythmic stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Changing time signatures, or a dotted eighth to a 16th note rest to a triplet to, crazy stuff, rhythmic, that's what I thought it was for.
Wow.
Now I'm much wiser and I know what it is for other things, but
yeah, that's
and I'm not discouraging anyone from practicing with a metronome. By all means, continue to use it. It's a very, very valuable tool. It cannot hurt your playing in any way. But if you decide to use the 5 minute method, don't use the timer when you're doing it because it's counterproductive. You can't stop. It's just nonstop. Okay. And it's worked for me so far. So.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there, Rusty, with your technique. Call me crazy, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
I never heard of that before.
Yeah, even Petrucci I got Petrucci using one. He was using the head in his backstage rig for a while.
And was he probably never heard of it either? He was probably
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
But no, I had my period where I really pushed my technique really hard, but I had how do I explain this? 5 or 6 exercises, 2 notes per string, 3 notes per string, 4 notes per string, but I'd also be changing the I try and change the note divisions. Sometimes I would do one exercise and say, okay, now we're going to do it as a triplet. Now we're going to do it as a 16th note. Quintuplet, sextuplet, septuplet. And sometimes I'll mess with my more advanced students with that. I'll say, okay, cool, that's great. Now we're going to just change the note division. They're like, what?
Yeah, right. So I'll do stuff kind of like that, but instead of changing the note subdivision, I'll change the note groupings. For example, I'll go from 5s to 7s. You know what I mean? Or a 12 or a 6 or a 4
Very
You know,
Sean Lane, by the way.
yeah, very much
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
That's where I got the ideas from. But ironically, I was doing some of this stuff, like I was doing sevens before I'd ever heard Sean Lane. I didn't even know I was doing sevens when I was doing it. It was a sequence that I came up with when I was way
yeah,
younger. And then later on, when I analyzed it, it was like, oh, that's seven notes per grouping or whatever.
no,
But the thing is cool about sevens and fives is that when you can do a seven that starts on your pinky,
yeah,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or you can do a seven that starts on your index finger. Then when you do fives, when I first started doing fives, I didn't like fives because you end on the same finger you start with. So I devised a way to get around that. It's when you do fives, your first five starts on the pinky, the next five starts on your index finger. So it's constantly flip flopping. So the listener's getting hit with a barrage of notes coming from every direction, right?
okay,
So if you mix fives and sevens, both types of fives, both types of sevens, you can get a sequence that seems like it's never ending, because I might do a five into a seven into another five into another seven. That's four different sequences and I haven't repeated anything yet,
mm-hmm.
right? And then you can add a six to that, you can add a four to it, and then you get, because I'm kind of on this kick right now where I want to develop sequences that never repeat themselves. They keep changing constantly,
Yeah.
and I think that's pretty cool.
It's funny. When I was younger, my mother used to say to me, "Well, the same part of the brain that opens up for music, it opens up for math." And I'm like, "It still
Not
has
for
never opened
me.
up for math."
Yeah, me neither, dude. And I think that's when I was younger, when I took theory, like in high school and stuff. I did really well at the harmony side, but when I started talking about math and it, I mean, music, like time signatures and counting, and it's
Yeah.
just like, I didn't get it, man.
I had a very traumatic experience with a music teacher when I was in grade four. Very, very, very bad. And it really affected me for the rest of school and into high school. I just would, there was a wall. I just could not accept how they taught music in school.
Hmm.
My first teacher came along and he really had a different way and he opened me up to theory and all that stuff. But, we have lots to talk about too as being a teacher. So for me, when I teach people, even if it's a short-term relationship, they take lessons for a month or two. I don't really teach kids anymore, but I always found it was important to make sure that their first exposure to lessons was fun,
Yeah,
because if it's not fun, they'll end up hating the instrument and never.
sure.
And I've had a lot of those students come back a few years later when they're older and they're more serious about it. But I think you get what I'm talking about with that too. You want to
Yeah,
make sure their first experience is as fun as you can make it.
sure, man. I had a really bad experience with a music teacher in school as well. And this was before I was playing guitar. I think it was maybe in sixth or seventh grade, and I had to take a music appreciation class or something like that. And I don't know, something came up and it just got really ugly. And ended up making me cry in class and shit like that. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah,
And
yeah,
if you would have asked me then if I thought I'd ever play guitar or an instrument, I would have said, "Are you crazy? Get
yeah.
me out of here."
No,
A couple of
exactly.
years later, I started playing guitar, but that directly affected me, and also the education system in school has greatly affected the way I teach as a guitar teacher. Because when I was in school, school will teach things one way, and if you don't happen to learn that way, then you get labeled and as such and put in different classes and all that kind of stuff. So as a guitar instructor, I've made it a point to be able to teach the same thing several different ways,
Yeah.
because not everybody learns the same way. So um, hopefully that helps students in music have not experienced what I experienced in regular school.
Yeah.
So
I have a big question for you. Okay.
sure.
You're a guitar teacher, obviously. Do you teach to live or do you live to teach?
um I definitely what was the second one?
Uh, do you live to teach? Meaning, I love teaching guitar. I'm very
Yeah,
selective now of
yeah.
who I'll accept for lessons.
Hmm.
But I love it's.
Oh
I
yeah.
I used to laugh at the guys in bands when I play with them and they'd have no money and laugh at me. Oh, those who can't teach. It's like, well, I'm putting money in my bank account every week. Are you?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you, man. I love to teach. It's not, I don't, it's not because I have to. You know
yeah.
what I mean? I teach because I want to. No matter what happens with my career, I will always make time to teach because I enjoy it. It keeps you sharp too, man.
Exactly.
You
Because
know what I mean? So,
there's a lot of bad teachers out there, and I
oh
think that
man, look at YouTube.
yeah.
I mean,
Should we go there, Rusty? Should we
yeah,
talk
yeah,
about
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I tell you this, I'll get students that try to learn on YouTube
Hmm.
because when you're a beginner or even intermediate player, guitar players have a tendency to think that if a guitar player is better than them, that they know what they're doing is correct,
Yeah.
and they could just be a few pages ahead of them,
Yeah.
right? And that's not the case. There's been many, 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 many occasions where I have to spend 6 months to a year correcting all the things that they learned wrong off of YouTube or from another local teacher that just shouldn't be teaching. It's amazing you know, who they let teach. Just any kid, you know.
You know, I've had that. Now, guys, you know, Rusty's got a great YouTube channel, a lot of great stuff there. I'd encourage everyone to go check it out. You know, you're watching us on YouTube. YouTube's a great, wonderful thing, and it's a great resource. But, you know, speaking as a longtime guitar teacher, I've had people, I'm sure Rusty and I could go into very detailed conversations about this, but I've had people say to me, well, okay, you know, first warning signs when you have someone call and all they care about is the cost. Because for me,
Right.
if you're going to be nickel and dimed over $5, and it's like I've got 30 years plus of playing and teaching, and like
Yeah.
really okay.
Yeah.
I've had people say, well, I'll just learn off of YouTube. I'm like, okay, take care, all the best. You know, I'm polite.
Yeah.
Usually they'll call me back within a year and say, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I'm ready to start now.
Yeah. Yeah. And let me also say that I'm not bagging on YouTube in any way, shape,
No.
or form. What I'm saying is that beginning and intermediate guitar players, people that don't know, you don't know what you don't know. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's easy to see somebody play and go, okay, this guy's great. Let's do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to know a little bit to know who to watch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you know who to watch, then there's a lot of great stuff out there. But when you don't, there's a lot of bad stuff too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So just be careful and be wise and make sure you do the research on who you're watching. You know,
Yeah.
don't just blindly watch somebody and think that they're great. You know, because, you know, in a year or two, you might realize that they weren't as great as you thought they were as you develop. You know what I mean? So just be careful, you know.
You know, one of the things too, since we're on the topic, as a guitar teacher, one of the things that used to really frustrate me is when people would come take lessons from me. They're paying for lessons. You know, I have a good track record of teaching in my region. Um, and there'd always be someone, either a family member or they have, you know, I always call it the Uncle Jed syndrome. They have an Uncle Jed who knows 3 chords and he's trying to teach them over me and he's confusing
Yeah.
them and they're not doing. So then I'll get to I'll get to the point. I'll say, look, like you're paying me for lessons. I really need you to work on what I'm showing you.
Yeah.
Or you'd always hear about they'd have this uncle or brother that's he's better than you. I don't know if you hear that very often, but
Yeah.
and then you see them play and go, oh my God, are they on crack? What are they talking
right.
about?
Yeah. I think I've probably experienced just about everything you can experience as a
Yeah.
teacher. You know, I've been teaching guitar since I was a senior in high school. So as you know, my age, that's been a very long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, and then you get this, you know, well, why does little Timmy need a virtuoso guitar teacher? It's like, well, you know, little Timmy doesn't. You can go over here and take from this guy cheaper, and then when you outgrow him, you can bring him to me if he makes it that long, and
Yeah.
and then I'll spend a year fixing all of the mistakes and
Exactly.
imperfections. I mean, you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line right there, man. You get what you pay for. You
No,
know, if
exactly.
you are doing something and you're serious about it, you know, it's a worthy investment. How much are you willing to invest into yourself? And for me, you know, when we were talking off the air earlier, and we did the
Yeah.
Brock Lesnar thing, it's like when I was a kid, if I had the opportunity to study with Yngwie Malmsteen or Paul Gilbert, I would have been hell yeah. I'm not the guy that's going to be, oh, I could never do that. You know, I'm going to be, yeah, dude, I'll take every minute of your time that you give me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was always inspired, and that was my motivation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That wasn't my discouragement or fear or I could never do that. You know what I mean? You know, or I never went into it thinking I have to be good enough to do this or that. You know,
Yeah.
it's always like, let's do it, man.
Were you ever
had a-
tempted? Were you ever tempted to go to GIT?
Oh yeah, man, I wanted to go to GIT big time. My folks just couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
You know, and I had a scholarship from school to go anywhere in Texas, and I just, man, I didn't want to do it, man. I tried. I went for a few semesters, but I was done with school. I wanted to go do music. I didn't want to have to do math still and English and history and all that crap. So
Yeah.
I tried it for a couple semesters, but no, I wasn't able to go. I mean, you know, I didn't finish because at the time I was teaching guitar at 2 guitar shops. I was working at a record store 2 days a week, and then I was taking 12 hours of college, playing in a band 5 nights a week, not playing out live. We're rehearsing and stuff, and beginning to perform. And so I had so much on my plate, and I just got burnt out, and I had to make the decision: what do I really want to do with my life? Well, it's like, well, I'm going to play guitar and I'm going to teach. So
Yeah.
I quit school, quit the record store, took all my students, consolidated them to one guitar shop, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
You know?
So I got to ask you the great theory debate. I was on an Instagram of a very popular YouTube guitar teacher, and people were just saying, "Oh, theory's stupid. Yeah, you don't need." I couldn't believe it. I'm sitting there like hundreds of comments, and I'm like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah.
Like, it would always amaze me. It's like, really? I had an embarrassing situation in my very first band. I was a rhythm guitar player, and that's insulting rhythm players. Um,
Mm.
the lead player was quite good, and he said, "Oh, can you play the C sharp on the A string?" And I'm like, "What's a C sharp? Where is that?"
Yeah,
Or like, "Oh, can you play that minor seventh chord on the 10th position?" I'm like, "What?
yeah,
What's a minor?
yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to know? Like, I don't understand
Right.
what the big deal is. Like, most of the guitar players, they can't even name the chromatic scale on the guitar."
Yeah, it's just kind of it's really kind of weird to me. You know, to me, not knowing theory is a frightening, terrifying thing. I mean, to me, it's like getting dropped off in pitch black night out in the middle of nowhere, and just saying, okay, go find your way home. I mean, maybe you get eaten by wolves or starved to death trying to find your way home.
Yeah,
But if you had a flashlight and some GPS, you get there a hell of a lot quicker. Or
yeah.
something. It's just like I can't imagine not knowing. You know.
No, exactly.
I've always, when you know theory, and it's not like I mean, theory is infinite too. It's never really ending, and it sets you up so that you know what you're gonna do. When you go to when I was younger, you go to an open mic and see these guys playing, and you get up there and you watch these guys take the first 8 to 12 bars to figure out where they're at and what key and stuff like that. And it's like all I gotta do is ask, it's an A, whatever, go, you're
Yeah,
good, man.
yeah.
A friend of mine used to play in this cover band that was really popular, and they would draw in all the big crowds and stuff. And I'd go up and hang out, and they would always call me up on stage to do a solo on one of the songs or something like that. And he would just throw me the guitar mid song and tell me what key it was in, and it was just go for it.
Away you go. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, man. You know what the possibilities are, and as you learn more, you learn there's more possibilities. Not knowing theory, you usually end up in one place. You find one thing that works and you don't realize that there are many other things that work also.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, man, I just can't imagine not knowing it.
No, exactly.
It's
So I
horrifying.
wanted to ask you too. Did you ever have a dream gig, or like, have you ever been asked to do an audition for a bigger band, or is that something you've ever wanted to do?
Oh yeah, man. I've been asked to, I was up for the audition for Guns N' Roses years ago. I didn't
I
do
didn't
it.
know that.
Yeah, I was up for Guns N' Roses. I didn't do that because Outworld was about to put out our first album,
Yeah.
and I couldn't see myself playing a Les Paul wearing a top hat. So really wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
One of the other biggest opportunities that I had was Megadeth. Um, Kiko's in there now. I turned that gig down as well. Um, uh, my daughter had moved in with me after me and my ex-wife had been divorced for about 4 years, and she just moved in when that opportunity came up. And at first, I was going to do it, and then I started thinking about it, and I turned it down because it's like my daughter just moved in. She's gonna have to move back home. I'm gonna, she was turning 16, and I was gonna do the whole driver's ed thing, and there's a short-term expectancy in Megadeth. You know,
Yeah.
most guitar players are only there a few years or a few albums,
Yeah.
and it would have been a great gig. I mean, I would have loved playing with them for sure.
Yeah.
You know, but it just wasn't worth it for me in the long run.
Yeah. And also, again, I had David Elfson on a couple of months ago. We had a great
Yeah.
interview and discussion here. But the thing, and we talked about this too, and I always have my theories about why certain bands don't work out, and there's different band personality types.
Hmm.
I was like the type A driven, and I'm pretty sure that you're that type. You're
Yeah.
type A too. You like to get it done. You like to. So sometimes when you have multiple personality types, if you have the passive one and you have then you have the resistor. No matter what you do, there's that
Mhm.
guy that he's just going to resist and be difficult with everything.
Yeah.
I had did a video about this a while ago, but if you join a band that's run by a very strong type A personality,
Mhm.
could you, as a very strong type A personality, how long is that going to work before?
Well, it's gonna work if I know what my role is. If I'm joining a
Yeah,
band, I mean, let's be honest, nobody's really in Ozzy or nobody's really in Megadeth except for Dave is Megadeth, Ozzy's Ozzy.
yeah,
Everybody else, they're just hired guns. So
yeah,
when you go into a gig like that, if you don't already get it, then you're gonna be in for a rude awakening. You know
yeah.
what I mean? But if I'm joining a band to be a member of this band and a real member of the band, you know what I mean? Then that's you guys will have to work that shit out, for sure.
No,
You know what I
absolutely.
mean? It's different. I mean, it's like I mean, look at like Roger Waters and David Gilmour. They battled all the time, and there's lots of other big bands that had inner squabblings, Van Halen with David Lee Roth and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
But you know, I'm pretty easy to work with as long as everybody understands each other. You know,
Yeah.
you know, when I've had guys that have joined my band on different occasions where they get in the band and then want to change it, and it's like, well, you listened to all the music in advance. You agreed. You came out and auditioned and played the band, and you agreed that you wanted to do this.
Yeah.
You didn't, you know, we're not changing now that you're in the band. This is what we're doing, you know?
Yeah.
So I never could understand that. It's like, okay, let's change this. Or I had a guy, you know, we had a bass player and a drummer that was having a hard time with some stuff. And the singer came to me like, why don't we just like, you know, write simpler stuff? And I'm like thinking, let's dumb it down to their level.
But you,
No, man,
you
you
know,
play at my level. You know, I had people call up when I was in Outworld, we were auditioning drummers. I get a call from this guy saying, yeah, man, I think I'd like to learn to play some double bass. You know, and I'm like, this is not on the job training, man.
Yeah.
You know, I got a drum set out in the garage, got to dust it off.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, come on, man. You either can come in and step up to the bat and hit it, or you can't. You know, this is not time to learn.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, dude.
We won't even go there, but to me, I often use this analogy. A band is often like a relationship. In the beginning,
yeah.
it's great. People tell you what you want to hear to get things going,
Yeah.
but then once things get going and people get comfortable, then you start to see how they really are.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. And in my experience, I mean, first of all, everybody has their own personalities, and I've always been the type that says, you know, I don't care what you do outside of the band. You know, go live your life, do your thing. But when you walk through the door for rehearsal, leave that baggage outside.
Yeah.
And while you're here for the 2 hours or whatever rehearsal night, then make sure that you're here and present. You
Yeah.
know? And when you leave, you can pick up your baggage on the outside and take it with you, right? Don't leave your trash here. You know?
Yeah.
But the other thing, what was I going to say? The other thing that I've come to realize is that it's always the people in your band that feel the need to constantly profess how much they're there and they got your back and they're here to win it and make it. You know,
They're the ones you got to watch out for.
those are the ones that are going to leave the first sign of trouble. As soon as it gets tough, those are the ones that always bail.
Yeah.
You know, it's if somebody's got to constantly reassure you how much they're in it, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you go into a bar, it's the loudmouth that's always yapping and everything. You don't have to worry about him. If a fight breaks out, it's the quiet guys you got to worry about.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure.
So one more question about teaching. I really want to know what you thought of this. What is the hardest thing, or to explain for you, to teach to a student? For me, it's sweep picking.
Man, the hardest thing for me to teach is bending and vibrato.
Okay, well, yeah, that's there too.
Yeah, because it's just like the mechanics in it are so weird compared to everything else. It's like you spend time teaching a student that you got to hold your hand, you know, proper and stuff, and then all of a sudden it's like the complete opposite of that.
Yeah.
You know, there's two types of forms that you have to use when you play guitar. You have the form that you use in open position where you can wrap your thumb around the neck and play with your hand in its most relaxed state, right? Because I tell people, it's like, okay, what does your hand look like when it's in its most relaxed state? Well, your fingers are curled in.
Yeah.
Your hand's not relaxed like this, right? So if in open position we can play this way and still get all the notes to come out clear, why would you not want to have your hand in its most relaxed positioning? The least amount of effort that you exert, the better, right?
Yeah.
But this is limited to open position. You get out of open position, you got to play power chords, bar chords, bigger chords. Then you've got to get more into the classical form. You got to get to this, you got to get the thumb back and all that stuff. So you've got to learn how to go in between open position chord, right? And then scales playing and bar chords or bigger chords. And then when you get into soloing, it's bending and vibrato. It's back to the hand thing. Your hand is stronger than any one of your fingers. I vibrato with my hand, not my fingers. So it's like when you're bending towards the floor, it's like you use your index finger kind of like a fulcrum or a pulley against the bottom of the neck, and you got to pry it downward. It's much easier to teach a down bend than it is an up bend. Because when you bend, you don't move any of the joints in your fingers. The bend is always with the hand. It's like turning a door handle. You know, you open a door, right?
Yeah.
So if I got my finger on this note and I'm going to bend it, I'm going to turn my wrist without moving my fingers. As soon as my student does that, his fingers don't move with his hand. So it's like, okay, make your hand a mitten, right?
Yeah.
Your fingers now do not move. None of the joints in your fingers can move. They're all like locked. You have to turn you know what I mean? It's just been one of the most difficult things to teach is bending, man.
Wow.
Vibrato's a little bit easier,
Yeah.
but bending, it's like there's no real good way or diagram, you know, to explain the mechanics of what's going on with the hand.
often I'll get people sometimes I'll get people that'll inquire for lessons and say, hey man, just show me some of that crazy stuff you do. Help me get to the next level. And they'll come in and I'll watch them play. I will hook them up to an inline tuner
Mm-hmm.
and I'll say, and I'll show them their intonation. Like, I'll hear all these deficiencies, bending, vibrato, and their intonation.
Yeah.
And I'll say, okay, you're pressing too hard. Yeah, but man, but show me some of that sweeping stuff that you do. I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
I can do that. But if we just get your intonation better, you're already
Mm-hmm.
going to go to a next level. So
Yeah.
it's kind of funny when you say, I like to hook people into an inline tuner.
Yeah.
And to say for bends, vibrato, if they're struggling with their bends,
Yeah.
we do ear exercises. But
Yep.
that's really cool. I wanted to ask you too,
Yeah.
switching.
Real quick, if you don't mind, I was going to elaborate on that a little bit. Like with bending, I'll have them sometimes put their clip-on tuners on and
Yeah.
just watch it, right? Or you just play. Okay, if we're going to bend a whole step and you're going to bend the D on the third string up to E, play the note E first. Get that in your ear real good.
Yeah, we do that too. Yeah.
And bend up to it. Practice and then practice doing that randomly, quickly. Grab a note anywhere and then bend to it. Keep moving, just random notes.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. And half step bends and whole step, and so yeah.
I got to ask you about gear. Okay, so
Mhm.
I had my time 20 years ago where I had the rack effects hooked up with the MIDI cables and I program everything. And this is me, and I'm not saying, keeping in mind, I've been in clubs, I've played to drunk people, I've had drunk people spill beer on stuff, step on the adapter plugins. I'm not a big gear guy anymore. I have an Eventide H9. I bought a year ago. I still haven't learned how to. I've unboxed it. That's progress. But I haven't learned how to use it. I'm like
Yeah.
a good amp, a good guitar, and a few pedals in my fingers. That's kind of where
Yeah.
I'm at now. What I know you've kind of experimented with a lot of different stuff. Like,
Yeah.
what's your overall feeling if someone came to you about that?
Well, my rig has evolved and and devolved and etc. I mean, when I was in Outworld, I used to play with 6/412s, and I ran
Holy jeez.
I ran 6/412s even at rehearsal. It was 6/412s, and I ran a Rocktron Prophecy preamp initially into a VHT 292 power amp that went into 4 cabs, and then I had a radial engineering switch bone at the end of my pedal board that it went out. The other output went into a Bogner Ubershaw into two 412s, and then I blended the two together. And I had a Bradshaw switching system, and I had that for a very short time because I got the Bradshaw system, and a friend of mine had to wire it up for me. And this thing was so complex that I looked at the back of it and went, about after a week, and I went, if I get out on the road and something goes down, I'm not going to know what to do. So I took it all apart.
Bingo. Yes.
And what I did was then I took all my presets because I never could figure out how to do MIDI switching. So I took all my presets and just copied them through 1 through 15. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4. I didn't have to program them as a MIDI change.
Okay.
So like if I hit 1, it didn't go to 70, and if you hit 2, it didn't go to 20. I just put all those patches right in a line. I just copied them over. So I didn't. So my pedal board, my MIDI pedal board, would be right there, and I had one of those big ones that Rocktron made. It had so I could have up to 15 per bank. So I didn't have to bank up or down. I never wanted to do any banking during a set either.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I put them all, made it real simple. Yeah. And I had my pedal board, at the time when I had the big rig, consisted of like a Morley switchless wah, OD8, 08 Maxon, which is still pretty much a mainstay. Maybe a flanger. My Prophecy had all the effects in it. My Ubershaw always went dry, and my Prophecy had all the effects built into it. So I didn't have to have a bunch of pedals.
Yeah.
And then when I went from Outworld to Day of Reckoning, I tried to downsize. So I went to 2 412s and 2 212s and 2 heads. I got rid of the preamps and stuff like that. I tried using the Axe effects and all that stuff, and I just couldn't get it to not sound digital.
Yeah.
And so I went to 2 heads, and these heads kind of switched out anywhere from an Ubershaw and a 6505 Plus to a Splon Nitro. What else was I using at the time? I said a 6505 Plus Ubershaw. There was different heads that would, kind of make the rotation, and each head would get a 412 and a 212. And and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to get a pedal board and just make it real simple. Well, going to a pedal board after having rack stuff makes it more complex in a way, because now I had all of these. I had all these adapters that I had to hook up, and I had all these cables. Some of the pedals went to the effects loop. Some pedals went to the front of the amp. It's like, oh my God, this is such a headache.
Yeah.
It was worse than having the big rack. So I found a solution to the problem. There's a company called Pedal Snake. And Pedal Snake is a great company. They will make all your problems go away. I have a pedal board now, right? And I on my pedal board now. My pedal board's pretty. It's about like this big. It's got like a tuner on the front, and it goes into a wah. Then I got my Maxon 808. I've got a boost pedal, got a delay pedal, flanger, chorus, maybe something else. I don't know. And then it all goes into the to the switch bone at the end, made by Radial Engineering, and that goes one signal goes into one head and one signal goes into the other head. I don't ever A/B them. It's both heads are on at all times.
Yeah.
It's the sound combined of the differences that make my overall sound. But coming out of my pedal board, right, is one cable.
There you go.
You know, I don't have my guitar plugging into my pedal board and then two cables running out to two different heads, and then two more cables running to the effects loop of one head, and two more cables running to the effects loop of the other head, and then all my adapters, and then another cable running out. I mean, it took me like an hour to set up at sound check before I had the pedal snake. With the pedal snake, it's roll everything in, set it up, plug in a couple cables, and you're done.
And then you have time to relax and just chill
Oh
out.
yeah, man.
Do some
yeah,
stuff.
I mean, and the guys loved it when I got that pedal snake thing, man.
Yeah. Did you ever see Vernon Reed's pedal setup that they did on? Dude,
No,
you gotta check that out sometime.
I haven't. Now, okay. So I have a Kemper now that I got right in COVID.
Yeah.
So, but I have yet to get to play the Kemper with Day of Reckoning, my current band. And for me, everything has to pass the rehearsal room test. Every piece of gear, every amp, guitar, pickup. If it doesn't pass the rehearsal room test, it's never going to make it to the stage. Because when things do not sound the same at home at a practice level volume as they do when they're cranked up loud.
Yeah.
You know, I learned about how to hear the tone of woods, the sound of pickups, and things like that all through experiencing it loud. I could sit at home all day long and play on different guitars with different pickups at a practice level, and they all relatively sound similar. But you go to rehearsal and crank it up loud through some 412s, and it's like totally different. I mean, the first experience I had with that was in my younger days when I first started playing 7-string. I had 3 Ibanez 7 universes. 2 of them were universes, and 1 was an RG7. A month I had noticed that when I'd go to rehearsal, I didn't like the sound of my guitars anymore, and and I was thinking, oh man, I got to get a new amp, this or that. I wasn't putting it together because at home the guitars all sounded great, but I went to rehearsal and cranked it up, and something was weird with my tone. So one night I went to rehearsal, and both my universes broke strings, and I had to drive home real quick and get my RG, and it had an EMG 707 in the bridge.
Okay.
When I got to rehearsal and plugged it in, it was like, oh, there's my tone, you know. And you got to remember, this was in the beginning of 7-string, when, you know what I mean. We're talking like 97, I think.
Yeah.
I think I got my first 7-string in 96, but so there weren't very many selections for pickups. Okay, it's not like it is today. I mean, I've since played Duncan since like the Blackouts, and they're pretty killer. I'm an EMG guy for sure, and I've been with EMG forever. I've been with EMG since then. As a matter of fact, I had to call up EMG and get an endorsement with them, you know. But that was my first experience in hearing the differences in pickups and how important was it to hear it loud.
Yeah.
My first real experience in hearing the difference in wood and tone of the guitar was with when I had my first 8-string built. It was a Conklin 8-string, and it was the body was I think it was basswood, and then the top was a melted top, is what they called it, and it was the top part was lacewood, and then had a strip of winch or wingay, however you say it, going through the middle. The top was quilted maple, had an ebony fretboard, maple neck. And when I got this guitar, it was so bright. You know, I had no idea that I was picking this guitar with all these bright woods. They just looked cool.
Yeah.
Right? At home it sounds good. You get to rehearsal and it's just high end.
Yeah.
I mean, I ended up getting some EMGs in it because it didn't come with EMGs, and back then EMG didn't even make 8-string pickups, so they were 8-string bass pickups.
Yeah.
That were similar to these different 7-string pickups. But I ended up getting the guitar sounding really good. You can hear it on 3 songs on Outworld's first album. You can tell it's because when it sounds like I go to a whammy pedal or something, it's really that high A string.
Okay.
You know, my 8-string was high A to low B, not low F sharp.
Okay.
Right. And that was that. I got that guitar in 02, I think. So I've been playing 8-string since 02. Even before the Meshuggah guys, but that's a different. They went lower.
Yeah.
That's what inspired me to get a 9-string guitar. when I restrung my 8 string with a low F sharp one day, I was like, well, this is cool too. So I had Conklin make me a 9 string guitar. It was high 8, low F sharp.
Yeah.
But it was so early on in the game, the technology wasn't really there, and we couldn't do the fan would have been so great on it that it would have almost been sideways. You know, having a high A, the high A side of a fretboard with is 23.5 to 25.5. But then if you go to a low F sharp, you need longer. So 23.5 to 26.5 or 27, that fan's going to be nuts. Yeah. So the fan wasn't really there, and nobody made. There was only one company that made 9-string pickups, and so it didn't really last. I didn't get in on it.
No, I gotcha.
I didn't stick with it, but it's like, those experiences are major experiences, because when I was a kid, I heard people and I'm sorry if I'm going on about this.
No, it's okay.
It's important. It's like you hear people talking about the difference in tones of wood and guitars and pickups, and and when I was younger, I didn't really hear it. I didn't understand how to hear it, but when put in the right situation, you definitely hear it.
Yeah,
for sure. And you learn, man. It's a good learning experience to be able to actually begin to hear the difference in those sorts of things and know what to listen for.
So, all the technique guys, I mean, I'm sure they want me to ask some questions. So, sure. I remember my insane technique phase about 10 years ago. You were a big inspiration for that. But you had a quote. No, man. It's just keeping it real. You had a quote. I read in an interview. You said, do your was it a workout or practicing every day? It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. And it's so true. Mm-hmm. And, I got a lot on the go. I got so much, for the most part, my technique's good. I just spent a month of every day, about 45 minutes every day, no matter what, working with the metronome. Interested in this timer bit. Yeah, so a question I want, well, it's a couple of questions. The question I want to ask you guys, like you, Yngwie Malmsteen, Michael Romeo, Alex Skolnick, all these guys. I'd like to say, do you ever have a time where you just want to put the guitar down for a day?
For sure, man. It happens. Yeah. I mean, you gotta stop and breathe a little bit sometimes. There were times when I would practice every day. I mean, there was at a time I made it a goal to practice every day for a year. Yeah. I mean, most of the time something comes up and there's bound to be one day in a year where you can't pick up the guitar, and I made it a whole year without putting it down. Wow. At one point, that was in the early 2000s. Wow. Yeah, and it's the funny thing about it now is that not so much about putting it down, it's like picking it up, right? Yeah. It's like the older I've gotten, I feel like I have less time to practice. I did all my heavy practicing when I was younger and I was raising kids and I had little kids at home. Yeah. During the day, before they were even in school, I was doing my practicing. I was raising kids. When Sebastian, my oldest son, was like a baby, I was going to the post office 3 or 4 times a week, because that's before you could email stuff to people, right? Yeah. So I'd be going to the post office 3 or 4 times a week, mailing cassettes, demos to places with him on my hip. You know what I mean? And then practicing and teaching, and get out and practice, take care of my kids, go to work in the afternoon, teach 3 to 8. Come home for about 30 minutes, turn around, go back out the door, go to hour of rehearsals, come home, do all the nighttime feedings with my kids, because my wife at the time had a day job, right? So she had to be in bed. So I was coming home from rehearsals, so I would stay up and take care of the kids, and so she could rest. So it was busy, and I was still practicing like a maniac. Now, I think maybe some of it has to do with, now that I'm, where I'm not married anymore, it's me here in the house, and I'm taking care of every single detail. And that's, I think we talked about that a little bit earlier too. It's like before, all the responsibilities. It seems like it's more than it was when I was just taking care of kids. When you got somebody else that can help you with half of the stuff, you know what I mean? It's
I went through.
Let me ask you a question real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where you teach at, right? The room you're in now.
Yeah. Okay,
where do you practice at?
Here, in the same room.
Do you ever have a problem with that?
No. I have my. This is my old Cubase setup. It works for me. Right. And I have my metronome that goes up to 400, by the way, Rusty. That's partly because of you. But no, I practice, and I we talked about this before we started recording, but I don't sit there with a metronome for 2 hours. Like you turn into a serial killer, right? Yeah. But I'll put on some. I'm an MMA guy. Like I like watching UFCs and stuff. I'll put on some old UFCs, and I'll just go, right? But no, I've never had a problem with that at all.
See, I kind of do because it's like after I've been in here all day teaching Skype lessons or I do in-person lessons
Yeah,
too. It's like once I get done teaching, it's like 9:30 or sometimes 10 at night. Then I gotta get out of this room because I've been in here all day.
yeah,
Sometimes I might start at 12:45 and then go till 9:30 at night.
yeah,
Then I gotta find time to practice. And then I find when I come back in this room to practice, I'm still associating it with work, and I hate to call teaching work because I
yeah,
love to do it, but it is what it is, no matter how much I love it. So then I come back in here and I have a hard time getting into the zone to practice. It's almost like I feel like I need to have another room in my house. This is where I'm creative. This is where I practice and do my thing, and then this is where I teach.
yeah.
The problem with that is that I have to have a duplicate setup of everything, you know. I've even considered to doing what worked the best for me, and it's what I did when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I didn't have a computer. We didn't have computers. It was me
Yeah.
and my guitar in my bedroom with my books and a piece of paper and tab and pencil.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about doing that. I got a whole rig set up in my bedroom. I got like a half stack in my bedroom with two heads on it and pedal board and shit,
There you go.
and some acoustic guitars in there as well. And it's like I think I'm gonna start trying to practice in there, and then if I need to record, I'll just hop up and come in here. That's a little bit of the pain in it though, because I'm not already here. So yeah, I struggle with that, man.
Some people have. I've heard of that though, Rusty. I've heard of some people. For me, that's never bothered me. But I get into my routine. I'm up at 5 Monday to Friday. We go to the gym,
Yeah,
come back, breakfast, and then I have my half hour to an hour of me time, guitar study,
yeah,
practice,
yeah,
metronome, and then
yeah.
the morning it's admin, and YouTube time, and then 1 in the afternoon I start teaching.
Yeah, dude. I'm going to talk to you about that. We can talk about that later. Before we,
Yeah, after I do my sign off,
yeah,
we'll
yeah,
chat a bit
yeah.
there. But um, so how long? What's the longest stretch you've gone without touching a guitar?
Oh man, I would have to say the longest stretch I might have gone without touching a guitar would maybe be on a vacation, where I just couldn't take a guitar with me. Maybe a week, maybe.
Okay, okay, no, it's kind of cool
Maybe.
to know that. But
And
so
that's been a long time because nowadays I don't take vacations. If I take a vacation, I take a staycation.
yeah,
Because to me, going on vacation, you come home not rested,
yeah,
because you've been on the go. For
yeah,
me, vacation is like about recovering, taking some time to breathe.
yeah.
So if I got to pack up and go somewhere and then hurry back home and go right back to, the grind, then I'm not, you know,
Yeah.
so I'm kind of
Um,
a homebody.
when you like, I don't sit there with my exercise routine. The longest I went when I was in this weird state was
Hmm.
8 months, and I missed one day
Oh
because I had the
shit.
flu. Okay,
Okay.
I had the metronome every day.
Wow.
Now, like, I had
I thought you
I,
meant you went 8 months without playing guitar. That's why
no,
I
no,
said,
no,
oh
no, no,
shit.
no, eight
Yeah,
months of everyday
yeah,
metronome,
yeah, yeah,
2 hours. But so I had a stretch. I have a training diary. I treat it like going to the gym of my
yeah.
exercises, my metronome settings. August 25th to October 21st. And then
Hmm.
I had broke a tooth, and I had
Hmm.
stuff happens in life.
Right.
If I go, I'm okay for a week or two. Like, how long do you notice like it starts to slip a bit? Your technique. You're like, oh, okay, I got to get back and
I don't know,
kick my
man. I've
ass
never
again.
gone. I've never gone that long.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Where I've noticed something. I mean, I have been. I don't know how much you want to get into this, but I did have, and I'm still experiencing and going through a hand injury,
okay,
that nobody's been able to diagnose. I've seen. I went to the doctor that works with the Houston Symphony Orchestra. I went to acupuncture. I went to orthopedic surgeon. I went to another doctor that works with musicians, and the doctor that worked with the Houston Symphony Orchestra. So what happened was I started noticing that my ring finger was kind of not firing correctly. It's kind of like overshooting, undershooting, kind of missing, and it was just kind of weird. And I started noticing this when I was still teaching at the music school, and I started taking a telly and a six-string acoustic up there, both tuned to standard. My guitars are always tuned half step down. Started noticing that when I started playing the guitars in standard tuning, then I'd come home and pick up my seven strings and half step down, and started feeling weird. Like that's when I started noticing something going wrong with my hand. So in my mind, that's where something started to change. But all the doctors that I've seen said that this might not even be related to guitar playing at all. Okay.
hmm
Matter of fact, they all told me that, and there's no pain associated with this at all. The only pain that I get is mental, because it's not
yeah,
working right. So the first doctor that I saw that works for the Houston Symphony Orchestra, she did it as a favor to me for my singer, because he's got a degree in sports medicine and kinesiology, so he works with all these people. So I came down on her lunch hour. She did some tests on my hand where she had me put my fingers together like this and push out, and then to test my strength going out, and then she had me hold my fingers out and pull in. So my strength pulling in was great. It was pushing out was bad. So she immediately assessed that the muscle on the left side of my ring finger had been greatly depleted. She said she doesn't know why. She goes, most musicians don't talk about their injuries, don't want to talk about their injuries, don't want nobody to know that they're injured. Mm-hmm. She goes, get some rubber bands and just practicing opening and closing your hand. So I'm going, okay, whatever. I bought some rubber bands and did it for about 2 seconds. Went back to playing guitar. Right, so still not getting better. And then I went and saw another doctor, and he started doing some massage therapy on my arm. And he's like, man, you've got a toxicity build up in your hand. He goes, and I did like 3 days of physical therapy with him, and because he was in town visiting a friend, and it's another favor, right? Yeah. And he said that the buildup in my arm and the muscles and the lactic acid
and the scar tissue.
Yeah, right. He said that was causing the circulation of blood to not flow to and from my hand properly, right? So he did that stuff. And he said, yep, you're going to have a 100% recovery. Of course, he went home, lives out of state. I haven't seen him since, but it didn't get any better. And then I went to acupuncture, and that didn't help at all. It did help my right elbow, though. I was having some pain in my right elbow. That's gone, but didn't help this at all. Went to an orthopedic surgeon, one of the best in Houston. He goes, man, I don't see anything wrong. X-rayed your hands. He goes, he recommended me to this another group of people, which I'm about to call here in a little bit, because they're going to actually do something pro bono for me. Some of the doctors that work for them, they work with musicians. It's the Houston Methodist Center for Performing Arts. So they're actually going to work with me a little bit since I don't have insurance being a musician. Mm-hmm. Stuff like that's costly. So, man, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and I'm working hard. I mean, I've bought some wild-ass contraptions like this shit here, man. You put it on. Have you seen these before?
Yeah, but can I tell you something, Rusty?
Yeah.
If you don't mind?
Yeah.
I had a period of musical burnout, teaching, the gigging and everything. For a few years, I got into a different industry. I was actually a competitive powerlifter. Mm-hmm. And in my late 40s, I was a sponsored athlete pulling over 700 pounds in the deadlift.
Holy cow, man.
Elbows turned, locked in. See, look at that drive. Not near as much shaking, okay? Hips, adductors, abductors, glutes, much better condition. A little bit of shaking, but not like the way it was before, okay? So video to proof it, I'm sponsored by companies and stuff, but I had to go to a lot of RMT work. It's almost like a Spider-Man thing. Yeah. But they told me, because of all the years of playing guitar and lifting and other habits, men develop in their teenage years, which I won't get into. Yeah. The scar tissue in my arms was brutal. So I use a massage gun to break it up every second night. Okay, not a doctor, not diagnosing.
I bought one of those things, so I have it. I even have one of the little things where you put those electrodes on and it shocks your arm and shit. Yeah. I've never done them consistently, but do you think that actually would work?
I'm not diagnosing.
So you use one of those you use one of those really big, powerful massage guns.
Yeah, with the sharp pointer on it.
Yeah.
So that's another thing a lot of guitar players don't know. Like, if you've been playing guitar for 30 years, you're gonna have scar tissue.
Yeah, I'm gonna try that because I have one. I bought it for that reason, and I don't know. It just seems like, man, I should just be able to fix it playing guitar, but it hasn't worked so far. But I'm gonna definitely try that.
Keep me posted on that, eh?
Yeah, hopefully I'll get some results from this doctor that I'm.
Yeah,
it's cool that they have that in Houston. You know what I mean? And they actually have doctors that will work pro bono with you.
So you're with Ormsby Guitars now?
Yes.
I see some nice ones in the background there. Yeah, awesome looking guitars. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, man. Let me just grab one here. This one's pretty cool. Yep, this is the Ormsby RC1.
Wow.
And it's a beast, man. It comes with all the things that I'm known for. It's got this one has 27 frets, 27 full frets. Yeah. And this one's a neck through, right? And you have all access to all the frets. I mean, my pinky right there is at the 27th fret, and I have no problem playing the 27th fret with the depth of the cutaway. The cutaway back here is also scooped out. It's wide and deep, so you can get your hand in there, do as big a stretches as you want. All 27 frets, that's great. super thin neck, like always. It's what you would expect.
Oh,
The tall ass frets,
yeah,
I can't remember which ones are taller, 6100s or 6105, but whichever the taller ones are, that's what I
yeah.
have on here. So it's almost like playing a scallop neck. And speaking of scallops, it does have a slight scallop on it. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Oh, yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, so it starts like at what is it, right here at 12, and it comes up to about the fourth string here at the 16th. No, yeah,
Yeah,
it's the 18th fret. With all these extra frets, it's hard to look at sometimes. And then it goes back down, and it's in such a way that it's very beneficial, and you don't really notice it. It's subtle.
yeah,
Like years ago, I had a guitar that had the last four frets scalloped, and I hated it because it was like the whole neck felt a certain way, and you got the last four frets, and it was like totally off.
yeah.
It totally felt weird. So this with the partial scallop really works super well. Got to be one of the coolest headstocks ever, man.
Rusty, dude, I got to tell you, you have the awesomest taste in guitars, dude. It's like
Thank you.
I was with my partner the other day, and I said, I don't even like going into a lot of guitar stores now. This is maybe, we'll do this again down the road, but there's so much junk out there, and but I like your taste in guitars. Like to me, that is a freaking gorgeous guitar, man.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's got all the, it's pretty simple, one volume knob, a three-way.
Yeah.
I don't use the tone knob, so why?
I've never used a tone knob. I don't even. I hate them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine was always on 10 anyway.
Yeah.
And why leave room for error when you're playing live? Why does it sound like shit? Oh, I bumped my tone knob.
Exactly.
Kill
Exactly.
switch just for fun. EMGs, I always use the 85.7 in the bridge, 707 in the neck. And a main thing is the Floyd Rose low profile. I can't play a regular Floyd Rose because the fine tuners are in the way of where my hand goes.
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing is, the neck is sunk deep enough into the body that the tremolo pretty much sits level with the body. This one's up a little bit.
Oh, look at the input jack. Oh my God. That's awesome.
Oh yeah. The input jack. That's super sick, right? You can't, it's like hidden from the front. So you flip it over and you got that.
So Ormsby, just for I can't go to my local music store and get one of those. So how would someone get one? They'd have to go online?
Well, Ormsby makes their guitars in runs, so they're not always available. So we made the first run of the 6 and 7 string RC ones, and they all sold out, and they're scheduled to make a new run. I'm not sure exactly when. So the only way you can get one of these, since they were all bought, is to try to find one used. That's the downside to it. You have to wait for the next run, and then you got to get in line for where all the other runs they got to be made before your run. And it's a little tough to get it, but if you could find one, it's definitely worth it.
Oh my God, gorgeous
it's a
guitar,
beast, man! It's a beast. It's
we have very similar tastes in guitars.
It's built for speed and performance,
Yeah.
That's the thing, man. Also, I use the inverted strap locks, so they're out of your way.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm forgetting something. Ebony fretboard, mahogany body.
Oh.
Always use ebony fretboard, maple neck. It's got the reinforcements.
Wow.
And stuff like that.
So one thing I'd like to mention to everyone too is I'm on Rusty's Patreon. There's so many Patreons out there. I'm very particular as a guitar player. I love Rusty's Patreon page. He had some really awesome sick licks that he put the tabs up to, and so I encourage everyone to go check out Rusty's Patreon for sure.
Thank you. Please do. This one's pretty sick too.
Yeah.
This one's got like
It's a neck through body. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're all neck. Yeah.
Neck through body.
They're glued in set necks.
Okay.
But man, they're just pretty sharp, dude.
Yeah, no, man, that's sick. That is a sick.
Well, I've got 3 of them that were made in Australia because it's an Australian company.
Yeah.
And then there's 4 of them down here that are the imports. I mean, they're obviously all imports to us in the U.S., but they they import in the Australian model. So anybody that wants a custom made one can have that made anytime.
Okay,
if
awesome.
If you want an Australian made one, you can call them and say, hey man, I want this and this color, and they'll build it for you.
Awesome.
But otherwise, you have to wait for the run. So I guess you can get one anytime if you're willing to pay for the custom build.
So as I said, guys, Rusty he's with Ormsby Guitars. He's got great, and I've always known this about Rusty for years. I'm like, man, that dude's got killer guitars. We have got the same taste. I really like Rusty's Patreon. We were having a big chat about that, and there's a lot of stuff going on over there as well. Rusty gives private lessons.
Yep.
Rusty gives private lessons, and you have your own signature pick line, right?
Yep. Man, I use the Swiss picks. I got a couple different ones. The first one that we came out with is this guy right here. Okay. And I use the 2.0. It's a Swiss pick. This is the nuclear chatter model, right?
Okay. Nuclear cheddar.
Yep. And before I was using this pick, I was using like a Dunlop Old Tex pick. So it's a point, but it's not super pointy. So when Pete from Swiss Picks first called me up, he was, you know, he's actually, he just sent me some picks, and it was like it was thinner, and it had a regular round tip, like a Fender Extra Heavy or something like that. And I said, well, dude, thanks for sending me the picks, but do you make anything heavier? He's like, well, we don't make it at the time, and you know, we just talked for a minute, and that was that. Next year rolls around, and he says, he goes, hey man, where you at? He was at NAMM, and he thought I was going to be there, and that was one year that I didn't go. And he goes, well, I made you these picks, man. And and I said, well, I'm not there. So he sent them to me, and they looked like this. This was the cheddar model, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but they were made out of a different material, a Durlin material, right? And I liked the pick a lot. I just wasn't crazy about the sound of Durlin. It was a little bit warmer than what I personally like.
Okay.
And I kept trying to get him to make it with this other material, which is a polycarbonate. That's what these are.
Okay.
And he's like, well, dude, you know, if you don't like the picks, you don't have to play them, and you know, and yada yada. And I was like, no, dude, I do. I like the pick. I just, will you try this other material? And you know, it's a small company, so it's not easy to do these. Just try these changes. It's not that easy. Yeah. So I finally convinced him to do it, and he calls me up, and he's like, oh my god, dude, this is the best pick in the world. It's the fastest. It flies off the string like glass, and you know. Yeah. And I was like, dude, you should have listened to me 6 months ago. You know. So that's kind of the story on how this came about. So this was the first pick that Swiss Picks made like this. Now they make other picks that aren't my signature model that look like this. Okay. But it's based off my signature model. Like they make the ones in Durlin still. Okay. But it comes like this, and then we have this. This is more recent. This is I forgot what we're calling this. I think that the joke or kick around name was the prison shank. Okay. But I came up with the idea for this one day, and let me tell you something about these picks. First of all, these picks are so tough, dude. When I was teaching in the music school, I left one at the school, and it took me a year to make any wear on it.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. And
I go through picks like.
I told Pete, I said, dude, we are going to either have to make these more expensive or make them cheaper, because nobody's going to need to buy them replacement. Yeah. Because they last so long. I mean, I'm not kidding at all. I left one at the school and taught on it 5 days a week for a year before I started seeing any wear on it. You know. And that should say a lot. They're USA made. That should say a lot too, right?
Exactly.
So they are tough as nails, man. They last forever. And I made the first version of this. I made a couple here at the house. I was practicing one day, and I was like, let me try this, you know, for what I was practicing it. And so these things are so tough that you know, with a regular pick, you can kind of take it and rub it on the carpet even and reshape it, right? Yeah. I had to actually get sandpaper and a grinder out. Yeah. To shape it into this form. That's how solid this material is. You know. So I sent a couple to him that I made, and he's like, all right, well, man, if you really believe in this, we'll make some. So we've got both versions of it, and I don't play this one as much as I play the regular one, but this is like for super precise practicing and picking, because when you're picking, your pick should only dig in the actual depth of the string or less. Yeah. Right. So, you know, this is close, but this is even closer. So if you want to work on super precise, fast alternate picking, this is pretty much there. And it's got a bevel on the edge too, so it slides off the string really easy. It's just a cool option to have.
You know what? I'm going to do a review of them. I'm going to try some and do a review.
Cool, man.
And I'm a Jazz 3 guy. I have been since like the late 80s. But as
they
soon as they wear down...
They make them in that size too. They make, this is the regular size one, and then they make or I should say Pete makes one like this size. That's the I think that's the Jazz 3 size. So you got this, right? And then they make one that's in between these two, a size. So there's 3 different sizes of these. And then you got this one. So that's super cool.
I wear mine out quickly, and I get rid of them as soon as the coating starts to wear.
Yeah. Tell me how long it takes you to wear one of these out. What thickness do you use?
Just the regular Jazz 3s, just the red ones. That's the same one.
Yes, these are 2.0s. I think these are about what a Jazz 3 is. It's 2.0. It's really thick. You know, it's not. You know, I don't want a pick that's going to have any flex to it, and obviously a Jazz 3 doesn't because they're so small. But, and you know, dude, I tried the Jazz 3 thing years ago. I just can't use it for anything but lead playing. I can't play rhythm guitar with it. You know,
it is tricky.
Something more to, you know, I grew up playing Fender Extra Heavies, you know.
Yeah.
so I can't use the small picks, man.
You should see me when I do my funk lessons, teaching ninth chords
Oh yeah, that's
with a
brilliant.
jazz 3. It took a while to
Yeah,
get the hang of that. But
yeah, that man.
so Rusty, so it's rustycooley.com.
Correct. Yep.
rustycooley.com. And again, guys, check out Rusty's Patreon. I'm there. Hell, I'm there. Say hi to me when you pop on.
There you
We
go,
can
man.
we can have a little chat. But it's very important to me to be inspired with guitar, and Rusty's always been one of my go-tos to be inspired. I'm still, I'm not fanboying out here, but it's been wonderful. And
Thank you.
Rusty, again, I'm hoping down the road we can do something maybe a little bit more involved with both of us with the guitars as I get more technologically advanced with what I'm doing here. But it's been an absolute honor. Thank you so much for your time and coming on today.
Oh man, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. Enjoyed talking with you, man.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.